every single file or track or section of the tape starts off with this kind of Mark Mothersbaugh, Life Aquatic, Steve Zissou-esque music, and it's really awesome. Check it out.
This is your exercise to achieve focus 10, the 10 state.
I don't know if that's Bob
where
Monroe's
your mind
voice.
remains awake and alert, and your physical body is deeply asleep.
Okay, so this is the third time I'm making this video, actually. Okay, the first time, I've never made a video before, and I'm going to actually have cuts in this before I lose all of my data again. That's okay, though. I'm learning as I go. And this video, besides my technical problems, it's about the Gateway Experience, the Bob Monroe Gateway Experience. It's also about astral projection. It's also about Philip K. Dick and astral projection and altered states of consciousness within the Christian or Abrahamic dogmatic paradigm, and whether or not it's good or bad, or whether you should do it or learn about it or whatever. The kind of a few things all in one. It's mostly about the Monroe Gateway Experience CD set, which I refer to as the Gateway tapes, usually, because originally it was a tape, and that is how it is referenced inside this document, which is where I heard of it. Now, a lot of people that are on the internet a lot that are into fringe topics and conspiracy theories, they might be familiar with this document. It's called Analysis and Assessment of Gateway Process, and you can see it in the CIA reading room document, viewing area on the internet on their website. It's been making the rounds on this CIA document, and what it is an analysis and assessment of gateway process. And it's on the website for the CIA on a section called the reading room, where they have a lot of declassified documents. You never know. Take them with a grain of salt. I would still consider it a primary source. I'm going to make a distinction between primary sources, secondary sources. That's important. You can't just believe what you read. But I would still consider it a primary source. The science holds up, and it has to do with astral projection and what is it called, remote viewing, and all these different kinds of altered states of consciousness. Basically, they sum up something called the Gateway Experience, which is it's a way to reach altered states of consciousness. The Gateway Project was started by Bob Monroe. He wrote a book about altered states of consciousness, and then he came out with these tapes. It's basically guided meditation tapes that use binaural beats as well as resonant tuning to reach altered states of consciousness, supposedly. Bob Monroe, I don't know how linked he is to the Department of Defense or to the CIA, or if he is beyond this document being commissioned about his Gateway tapes, but I wouldn't be surprised, with these, I guess you could call them New Age people, and their links to intelligence and defense. And if you don't know about that, you should do some research about that, about just the general CIA and everything that they've been involved in. You've got a lot to learn, a lot to read about, I should say, and they commissioned this report, and basically, I'll read this first part of it because it sums it up really well. You tasked me to provide an assessment of the Gateway Experience in terms of its mechanics and ultimate practicality. As I set out to fulfill that tasking, it soon became clear that in order to assess the validity and practicality of the process, I needed to do enough supporting research and analysis to fully understand how and why the process works. Frankly, sir, that proved to be an extremely involved and difficult business. Yeah, and it is, because he basically gives this guy a whole framework from the ground up of a model of the universe and consciousness, and then goes into how the Gateway Experience works. And if you're familiar with holographic fractal theories of the universe and things like that, electric universe, stuff like that. I'm not going to really go into the science behind it. And if you're not familiar, there's a lot of basic videos about that kind of stuff. And again, you don't have to really worry about going to like a primary source, I would say, unless you're really into the nitty gritty, scientific or mathematical aspects of this kind of research. Um, well, the Gateway Experience, uh, it's going through different focus states. The focus 3 state is mind awake, body asleep. Focus 10 is what I refer to as the hemi-sync. Basically, this reading room doc talks about your hemispheres of your brain being in phase. And the Monroe tape utilizes guided meditation, binaural beats, and they make you resonant tuning to synchronize the hemispheres in your brain and make a reverberating blood pressure wave that comes from your heart, and it supposedly can put you in these deep states of altered consciousness. It sounds pretty out there, but if you read the doc, it's pretty credible, I would say. And in my experience, you can reach these altered states of consciousness with the Gateway tape. Although, as a disclaimer, I've only done the first set. I've only reached Focus 10 and done a couple other things, which I'm going to talk about. And it's definitely for real. I don't see why it wouldn't be for real if you keep going into it, why you couldn't astral project. I've heard lots of anecdotes from people that say you can. So I'm inclined to give it the benefit of the doubt now that I've done the first up to Focus 10. And basically, it's guided meditation. He tells you to lie down, guides you through uh, getting your breathing right, and okay, now you're not going to pay attention to the muscles in your face. Now stop paying attention to the muscles in your face. Now on the count of 3, now feel your arms. Now on the count of 10, you're not going to feel your arms at all, and they're going to be completely comfortable. 1, 2, and that kind of thing. So I'm not going to play too much of it.
My voice should be in your right ear at this moment. If not, your lips relax.
Here, you can hear a little
Relax
bit of it.
easily and go limp.
Hopefully you can hear this. Fast forward now.
5.
Now he's counting down.
Look with your closed eyes at your legs, at each leg, from your hip down to your foot.
He's going through it kind of fast in this, actually. It's a good lead up to being able to reach these states of relaxation. That's why I would recommend it, even if you're just trying to learn how to meditate or just to relax, because it actually really works. It got me into this Focus 10 state, and it's a pretty relaxed state of consciousness. The next thing that you do is he makes you do what's called an energy conversion box. And basically anything negative or bad or that you don't want to think about, anything from the material world or that's part of your ego or whatever, you're going to put it into a box, and you're going to visualize that box in your mind's eye. And that's your energy conversion box, and nothing can get out of there, and you're not going to pay attention to any of that at all when you're in your altered state of consciousness. And maybe it's just a placebo effect. In my experience, it worked. You know, it can be argued that this is all just self-hypnosis, and none of this is really real at all, you know. But in my experience, in my relative experience, it worked. I would consider myself a skeptic. Most people probably wouldn't at all, but I take a thing at face value. I kind of experienced it in my subjective reality, and that's all I can say about that. I got up to Focus 10 after that, and that's when the hemi-sync is acting, and your brain hemispheres are in phase, and that's when you can reach these altered states like astral project and stuff in Focus 10 and above. Because if you're familiar with these like holographic theories of the universe and stuff, you understand that the whole of the universe is encoded in any one part of it. People refer to the source. You can get to the source. That's what gnosis means partially. And reaching that source from within, and not accessing it from outside of yourself, but from it within your own power, basically. And I believe it. People can do this, and the Focus 10 worked for me. Uh, what I saw was like kind of colors, like you can see things when behind your eyelids just from the light usually, and besides that you can see like snow and things in different colors. But in Focus 10, when I was really deep in this meditation, I would consider it deep. Maybe I don't know what I'm talking about, but I thought it was deep. It was deeper than I've ever meditated without any kind of guided meditation. And I saw basically ethereal forms of energy, like auras, kind of. I saw my own aura, and that leads me into what they do first after Focus 10, which is they get you to create a resonant energy balloon, and they call it your rebow. And basically, my first experience with this was I read in a book when I was younger about aliens in like the late 90s, and they had a section on how to thwart an alien attack. And one of the ways they talked about having pets, a lot of cultures talk about dogs being able to see ghosts and stuff like that. Pets have always been associated with being aware of the supernatural or non-perceptible events that are happening. And then the second thing they talked about was making what I understand now to be a resonant energy balloon. And basically, you just, in your mind's eye, once again, you imagine an energy ball around yourself. But like I was saying before, you can kind of see this stuff at this point when you're in Focus 10. So I was able to see my resonant energy balloon to an extent. It's hard to explain. If you've been in an altered state of consciousness before, you can probably imagine what it's like. Uh, I'm pretty limited to them. Like, of course, I've done psychedelics and all that kind of stuff. But I've never lucid dreamed. I have a buddy that every time he sleeps, he can lucid dream like really detailed and remember everything and do whatever he wants. I've never done it. I've been aware in my dreams. That's why I don't think astral projection or Focus 10 or whatever. I don't think it's like lucid dreaming, because you're awake more. Like I would say that's not like the dream plane. When you're in the astral plane, because it's not like a dream where you think about something and it just starts happening, and like uh, into different like things that happen in a dream. Like, since it's a reality, like everything's very fractal. Like you think of one thing in a dream, and a million things start happening. And I don't see it like that at all. Like you're in control, and you're accessing a plane that's like there, uh, not just in your mind's eye. And if you've done psychedelics, you'll be more familiar with stuff like this. And the resonant energy balloon, uh, it's an energy balloon that, besides having the ability to supposedly thwart an alien attack, uh, no good energy can leave it. Only bad energy can leave it, and bad energy can't get in. Only good energy. Again, you might be self-hypnotizing yourself into thinking this, but it kind of worked. And I, after you learn how to do this, you'll probably do it. Uh, like you'll be able to reach this Focus 10 state and do your resonant energy balloon pretty quickly after you do the CD a couple times, the first two CDs a couple times. And it's pretty cool. Like, try it, and you got to do it to believe it. Kind of. This probably just sounds like bullshit if you've never done anything. I thought it was bullshit. I'm not gonna lie. I thought it was fucking bullshit. And they the CIA, it was like they're not exactly a credible source of information. But this gateway thing, it works. And you can hear what's on the tape. It's not anything like suggesting you to do anything negative ever or anything like that. It's I would say it's pretty safe. I want to talk about this also in under different and outside of different like paradigms of thinking, religious dogmatic paradigms and stuff. Like it's a lot of people would say that people quote the Bible and say that these different states of consciousness and stuff, and all, like anything occult or anything new age, it's like a sin or whatever. But I would say it's a tool just like anything else. And if you look at all these Gateway Experience CDs, they teach you how to do a lot of different stuff. Supposedly, if you go through it, you can astral project, of course. But then in the later CDs, they have like a health energy bar that you can supposedly heal yourself, and you can do all kinds of things that sound like they're not possible. Honestly, but that people have always kind of known are possible, and there's always been stories of people doing them and things like that. But your initial reaction is just like, oh, this is bullshit. My mind's more open to it since reaching Focus 10. Um, like, anecdotally, something else that happened was I did my resonant energy balloon, and then something supernatural things don't really happen to me, but I did my resonant energy balloon. I guess I can talk about this in another video or something. I'll talk about it another time. I had something happen on the physical plane that happened after I did the resonant energy balloon in the meditation, and when I was like awoken out of that state. Something I recommend is not to have like your roommates or your family or anybody around if you're trying to lay down and do the meditation. No pets. Make sure your phone's not going to ring. It'll get you out of the meditation state like that, and it's a bummer kind of because you're laying there for like half an hour, or whatever, and then they come home and it's all over, and you've just forgotten to feel about your big toe or whatever, and uh, yeah, that happened to me, and I had like something weird happen to me. I can talk about it later, perhaps. Um, People uh, talk about being under the influence of other entities and stuff if you astral project and stuff. And see, I thought about this in a way more concise manner on my last video. I guess I could save it for another one now. Basically, I was just talking about, you know, whether or not some of your thoughts come from within you or from somewhere on the astral plane or whatever, and transcending and tapping into other higher levels of knowledge. Uh, I talked about how I'm a musician, and like when if you're a musician and you've jammed out with people, and you've had times where like you played something really sick and just transcended completely, and then you guys all look at each other like, yeah, and and you think in your mind like, fuck, did I really just think of that, or was that fucking, did I really just do that? Like, that was fucking badass. And you question whether or not that came from within yourself, or whether or not you transcended and tapped into some other kind of higher consciousness. A lot of artists talk about it, and I would like to experiment using this gateway experience to do that. People talk about automatic writing and stuff. I don't trust any kind of thing where you're going blind like that, though, where like automatic writing and like Ouija and stuff like that. You don't know what you're opening the door to. And again, talking about it within like this Christian dogmatic paradigm that's typical. Uh, I would say that the altered states from the gateway experience are probably a little safer in that sense, because you're not like flying blind like that. And I would say once again, it's a tool like everything else. People like to quote the Bible and say that it's a sin to do any of this like cult stuff, but then they don't they don't actually read the Gospels, even though they call themselves Christians, and they don't see that Jesus, his disciples, he taught them how to do all kinds of crazy stuff, and they went and taught other people that stuff too that had never even met Jesus before. And obviously, if you're like in a Gnostic paradigm or whatever, like all that Old Testament stuff doesn't matter to you anyway. Um, if you're familiar with like other myths, Eastern myths, Sumerian myths, and Hindu myths and stuff, like these Old Testament quote unquote God, uh, it correlates with a lot of other deities and a lot of other myths, like the fucking Anunnaki in Genesis that people talk about, and the Elohim and how Elohim is plural. In the Gnostic Gospels, you'll know about the fallen angels and the Watchers and more about all that kind of stuff. And if you're a Gnostic, you just chalk all that up to the demiurge. It's the demiurge at it again, I guess. Uh, I think it's easy for Gnostic Christians to get into that paradigm of thinking because they're so familiar with if they used to be regular Christians or they grew up in that kind of upbringing, they're familiar with that paradigm where the Jewish Old Testament God is just one singular God that does all that stuff, and He is the Most High God, And then it's easy to become Gnostic and just be like, "Oh, it's the fucking demiurge at it again." But it's probably lots of different entities, and like yeah, you're open to influence from stuff like that, but it's a tool like anything else. And if you're spiritually and mentally grounded, like if you're grounded enough to do psychedelics, I think you're grounded enough to do all of this stuff, even if you are a Christian or anything. Um, just know, because you'll know like what's good and what's bad. Basically, like I know what evil is, I know what good is, and I'm gonna carry out my spiritual. What would you call it? Just on my spiritual path based on that. And not based on some kind of you know Christian doctrine that was co-opted by secret societies and all these kinds of people way back in the early days of Christianity. The Gateway Experience, they did a good job with it. It incorporates binaural beats as well. If you have some stereo headphones, everybody's got some, but get some half decent ones. And most importantly, get ones that are comfortable because you're going to be wanting to lie down, and meditate with these headphones on. So over the ear headphones is what I would use for the binaural beats. Binaural beat basically it plays two different frequencies in each channel, and it's a resonant frequencies. So they do different things. I don't know if you've like fucking read Vice magazine or been on Arrowhead or any of that other stuff from like the early 2000s. You probably heard like when Napster and stuff was around of iDoser, which was binaural beats that like they were supposed to get you high or whatever. It never worked for me, but they they had some ones that were like to calm you or whatever. Get you in different altered states of consciousness. Basically, is how I should put it. Altered states of consciousness, and they didn't work for me. They're incorporated in the Gateway tape, though. The Gateway tapes. Uh, yeah, it's a CD set, and it's a lot of CDs. Altogether, they cost like $1,000 or something like that. Don't quote me on that. They're more expensive than I would have been able to afford, though. Of course, I torrented them. Feel free to do so yourself. With the binaural beats, I wanted to have good quality. I put it on a Dropbox, so I put it onto MP3 in a high bit rate, and that's why it's stored remotely. Because all I got is like this. I got like a piece of shit, a little, the cheapest phone that doesn't have very much space on it from like Cricket or whatever. That's what you should get, honestly. I don't know why people are still giving the money to the big corporations and getting uh, with young people, like if they're so vain, if you don't have an iPhone or if you don't have a Galaxy or whatever, like you're looked at as like destitute or whatever. um, but that's stupid. Uh, I had a whole other rant in the last video that got deleted uh, because my Dropbox made me sign in with Google. Well, it didn't make me. I just forgot my password, and I went on a whole rant about that because I was talking about how it was linked to everything, and they're making a profile of you, A lot of people think that that's just selling your information for advertising purposes, like they would sell your address to receive out advertising circulars or something like that, or to get demographic information. And that's not true. Basically, it's you're helping the AI get smarter, and a lot of people know about that. Why that's not a good idea. More mainstream people have been talking about it, like Elon Musk even says that it's a bad idea. It's to unleash the AI. Uh, Everybody's heard of like what is it called, Roscoe's basilisk or whatever, Rocco's basilisk. I don't know what it's called exactly, but it's kind of a meme now, where you got to serve the AI God before it comes into existence, or when it comes into existence, it's going to smite everybody that didn't help it create itself. Uh, you know, kind of funny there. I was talking about Philip K. Dick in the other video too. Uh, I don't know why I was talking about him, but I was. I guess I'll just mention really quick that if you're into all this stuff and you haven't read Philip K. Dick, you're doing yourself a disservice. And he was actually an Episcopalian, and he was a Christian. I think that's how I got into this. And he believed that the universe was a hologram. And that was back when that was like totally wild to believe it, um, completely, utterly wild. And he he talks a lot about altered states of consciousness and that kind of thing. Uh, I was talking about primary and secondary sourcing before. I like to make a distinction between the two. Anybody can, like, I'm making this video right now for the cost of $0 for nothing. Anybody can make content that's like somewhat professional looking. Not that this is professional looking, yeah, but I could if I wanted to, and put whatever out there. So I like to make a distinction between sources. You can't just believe everything that you see. And if you're reading something and it doesn't have attribution, uh, then it's not. Then you're reading a blog. Basically, it's not something journalistic or scholarly at all. If you'll notice, if you read a newspaper, actually, everything has an attribution. If there's a piece of information, there will be an attribution, which is when it says comma said blank or comma according to, um, and then at that point, those are the primary sources, and the newspaper is considered the secondary source. Yes, a newspaper is not a primary source. A lot of people don't know that either, and I like to make that distinction. And then, yeah, like I said, there's things that aren't even a primary source, like HuffPo or anything, or sometimes even CNN. It's not a fucking secondary source. Uh, a lot of times they aren't actually. Open your eyes. These sites are garbage. These news outlets are garbage. And anyway, so that's why I want to make the distinction that I don't know if this is true about Philip K. Dick. This can't. This actually comes from a Discovery Channel documentary called "Prophets of Science Fiction." But according to the Discovery Network, Philip K. Dick, uh, his son was really sick, and he tapped into some higher knowledge. Nobody knew what his son had. He had a mystery ailment. The son was really, he was bad. He was young. He couldn't talk or anything. He couldn't communicate what was wrong. They just knew something was wrong. He was a baby, and Philip K. Dick received some kind of information about this baby's mysterious ailment, and then it turned out to be true once they looked into it. And supposedly as well, uh, like a lot of people might have heard that Philip K. Dick used the I Ching to write The Man in the High Castle. But people also say, I've heard in other places, just anecdotally, besides this Discovery Channel, which, like I was saying, it's not a primary source. Um, According to them, though, Philip K. Dick was able to tap into other realities, and that's why he thought this universe was a simulation or a hologram or whatever. And he, the Man in the High Castle is supposedly something that happens in an alternate reality or whatever. And that's interesting too. That kind of makes me think about time and how time, how time would even be interpreted by a human being. Everybody should know that time is not linear. Time is just a dimension, and it doesn't read the way we read it. Like not everybody reads left to right. It's fucking not everybody sees experiences time the way we do, and it's interesting to think about like how you could visualize that even, like I hate to use like a movie, but and if you've ever seen Interstellar, that part where he's like in the Tesseract and he's trying to communicate with his daughter, and he can experience all of time, but even then he's moving through time linearly, like I don't, so you couldn't even visualize it that way. But then again, maybe you could, if or maybe you would have to if you were a human. But it's not necessarily bad to do these things. It's just a tool, like if you know right from wrong and you're mentally and spiritually grounded, you'll be fine. Especially if you've done psychedelics and you handle it pretty well, then you're more than okay for this kind of thing. As long as you're, nothing's bothering you, as long as you don't have any kind of really heavy baggage, and even if you do, it might help you, you never, that's the thing, everybody's different. And some people are on different parts of their spiritual path. And this is just one thing that you can do, this gateway experience.